Hello everyone, welcome to episode 2 of the Walk and Talk podcast. I am not doing a video today, but I just thought it would be worthwhile responding to the big news announced by the Chancellor this afternoon about the magic money tree. The magic money tree that we have been told time and time again does not exist, has suddenly burst forth, erupted, you might say, and basically the government is going to cover everyone's wages up to £2,500 a month. People who are self-employed are going to be able to apply for universal credit, and they will be paid at the rate of statutory sick pay, which is £94 a week. Universal credit itself is increasing by £1,000 per year. And those are just some of the kind of top lines from what was a surprisingly comprehensive range of measures that are just completely at odds with the usual economic orthodoxy of the Conservative Party, which really says something about the true scale of what the government is expecting is going to happen, not necessarily just with the coronavirus, but the economic shock that we are about to experience as a result of these social distancing measures. So when I heard the news that the government are going to cover people's wages, I felt a sense of relief. I felt quite happy about that. And in the uncertain times as well, the tone that it was delivered in was quite appealing. I think even for people who are distrusting of the government or disagree, like I do, with many Conservative policies historically and present day, there is always a part of me that wants to believe the government is in everybody's corner and wants to help people. And so there was an aspect of the speech that appealed to that sense of togetherness as a society, of the role that the state can play. But then I also thought about it a bit more, and you know, I started thinking basically that the measures ultimately mean that people who have more will get more, and people who have less will get less. So this action isn't about addressing inequalities. This action isn't necessarily about helping people. It's about making sure people have enough money so that they can pay their bills and their banks and their gym memberships and their car loans, and ultimately all of the kind of, I think what you would call them, securitized sort of obligations that people have financially, which lead back to the big financial institutions. It's about making sure those are covered. And no, look, I'm not saying that that's not important at this time. We don't want the arse to fall out of the economy. But it does say something about the slight dysfunctional nature of the economy when the government is borrowing more money than you could comprehend to give to us so that we can give it back to other financial institutions, ultimately. And you can understand how contingent our way of life is on being tied into these financial institutions when you realise that if we fail to meet our obligations, society will collapse. And so it's nice that he got up and delivered it in a tone that he did. And it's nice that a lot of people are now becoming emotionally invested in this idea of the government again after a few weeks of being quite sceptical. And a lot of people are talking about how he's prime minister material, and the conversation is people really want to get back to normality, even just in terms of the rhetoric. They want to feel like things are being done, and that emotional appeal is very strong. But the subtext of everything that he said is not speaking to us. He's speaking to financial institutions. This is about calming the nerves of, the real powerful players in our society. And I don't even mean that. I'm not trying to stereotype them either. Just institutions are just things. And the people who work in them, whether it's bankers or solicitors or whoever it is, they're just individuals who have a job. And often it's easy for us from a distance to kind of ascribe these institutions with a character and an intention. Everybody's just trying to get by. It's just the kind of rules of society are so mental. We're so adjusted to them. But sometimes you just kind of have an epiphanal moment where you're just like, fuck, it's mad, isn't it? It's mad how our society works. It's really mental. Just a few days of people not being able to go to work, not being able to participate in the labour market, not being active consumers, and the whole thing grinds to a halt within almost a matter of hours. It's just fascinating. It's really fascinating stuff. I personally feel, perhaps it's not practical right now, but I personally feel if it was really, as I think it should be at some point, about actually helping people, lifting people out of stress and hardship as well. I mean, we're talking about sums of money that we've never seen a government spend, in history of this country. It's not being made available because we're at war. It's not being made available because of because of some kind of climate catastrophe. And I feel ultimately kind of implicit in this action. And I don't want people to think, I'm just trying to be critical of it. I'm not. It's just, I recognise this impulse in me to kind of be trusting in a time like this of government, and a desire to believe they mean well and that are acting in good faith. But at the same time, I'm also aware that what is implicit in these measures is that what we're saying is that people who have more are worth more. And I just don't know, in a time like this where we're talking about pulling together and everyone has a role to play and da-da-da-da-da, whether giving some people 2,500 quid a month and giving some people 200 quid a month or 300 quid a month is fair. And obviously the counter argument to that is, well, the people who earn more, they've got more financial commitments, and of course it makes sense if the logic is that all of these securitised obligations have got to be met, or there's going to be big shocks in the financial system. I get that, so I'm not faulting that logic. If that's what the money's for, cool. It's just that the Chancellor came and talked about it like it was a case of doing it to help people. And obviously it does help people as a byproduct, but it's not to help people. because there's no money got made available for people who are homeless. There's no money available for really extremely vulnerable people in our society. Tonight, homeless shelters across the country are closing. And then you've got people on 0 hours contracts. So if you're getting paid at a rate that is in line with your wage, but you have a minimum contract, how do people decide how much you're supposed to get? You know? And I think also, if you're earning less, therefore you're getting 80% of your lesser wage met by the government, whatever that wage might be, then it's not going to relieve much stress. It's not going to do a tremendous deal. And in fact might still leave people in a deficit, people who are using credit cards to cover their bills or taking out short-term loans or other forms of credit. So it's just, I don't want to seem like I'm shitting on what the government has done, because it has blown my mind what the government has done, particularly a Conservative government. But at the same time, I do feel that ultimately, in the long run, we're going to need something a bit more universal than that. Because what we're doing is we're kind of just shoring up the inequalities in the society at a time where people who have less are more vulnerable. They're more vulnerable because they are living in poorer communities, they have poorer health, there are all sorts of inequalities which were already very pronounced before this crisis hit. And these will be exacerbated by the disruptions to things like education and the health service. And also because of the social distancing measures, then people can't interact democratically in the traditional ways to express perhaps their displeasure or their resistance to certain action that's been taken in relation to these financial measures. And so, while I do commend the government for what they have done, I don't necessarily think that the statement that was made by the Chancellor should be taken completely at face value, because there's a lot of subtext there that's about easing anxieties for investors and stock markets, and basically this whole ulterior world that most of us aren't really aware of, and that has its own language and has its own news and has its own agenda. It's a fascinating time. I'm actually just lying in my bed right now. Today was the first day of, my family have been in isolation for 3 days. I came home last night. I had booked a hotel, but I just decided to come home for a couple of nights. And I can't go back to the hotel now. I might have to go back just to pick a couple of things up from my room. But on a personal level, it's really beginning to kind of dawn on me now, the level of disruption just to my own life. I'm trying to write a book, and I started writing it before Brexit, and it was difficult to nail it down because Brexit was such a big issue and looming beyond the horizon line. And when you're writing a book that's politically themed non-fiction, it has to account for in some way for what's going on in the zeitgeist. And the problem I'm finding is it's difficult to plant your flag in the political terrain when the sands are moving around you so violently. So then once the Brexit thing was settled, I sort of felt I was moving on, getting a bit of momentum with the book again. And now this. I know it sounds kind of maybe a bit jumped up, but that I'm complaining about that, given that other people are dealing with what they're dealing with, but obviously everyone is experiencing their own disruptions. It's not just about getting the book finished and the book being good, it's the fact that I get paid for doing it. That's my income. So I've got to finish the book to get the next advance. And I'm already like behind on my tax, and my next royalty check basically is going towards that. And so because of the social distancing, all of the other work that my income comes from is not happening. There's no public appearances, there's no public speaking, there'll be no TV work for whatever. That's my job, these are my jobs, do you know what I mean? I'm financially responsible in my household, so, and I'm self-employed. So I don't even know what these measures mean for me. I haven't even looked into it. One thing that might be useful for me is some getting like HMRC are going to defer a tax payment until next year or something, which might be helpful. I'll just have to find out from my accountant about that. But so on a personal level, you know, like everybody, the impact is beginning to become a bit more palpable. It was surreal for a few days, and then I started thinking, all right, hang on, actually. And then there's this sort of feeling quite claustrophobic at home. I mean, some days you just feel like that anyway. But I think it's the sort of knowing that it might be as long as, you know, from 12 weeks to even maybe a year, they're saying, and just that uncertainty. Not being able to go to the gym, which I need to do, just to keep my head, and all of the recovery meetings are closing. So my home group tomorrow is off now. And I had brought to the attention of my group the need for us to take certain steps, you know, like to emphasise that people didn't have to shake hands or hug, and I brought plastic spoons and cups, and really just tried to impress upon everybody that in, you know, in a matter of a week the whole situation might change, and that we should be ahead of the curve. And literally within a week the meetings are all shut. So that is, you know, impacting me as well. I can already feel, I can feel how I can become unwell. You know, I need my group. I need that. Even when I don't feel like going, I need it. And I'm seeing a lot of the recovery meetings have moved online, and they're just different because people are uninhibited by being on social media, and loads of class resentments are coming out and finding expression because people are mixing in groups online where they wouldn't mix in groups in real life. So sometimes just moving everything online doesn't necessarily work very well. So, I mean, that's just a bit of my own personal stuff in terms of how I've been disrupted, or my anxieties about it. My routine of training and being fit, my routine of going to meetings, needing a quiet place to write, and I just tens of thousands of pounds just totally wiped off my income. I mean, we'll be cool. I've still got the capacity to absorb a lot of adversity, you know, whether it's emotionally or whether it's like financially. I know it's going to be cool. I know everything will work out, and I know I'm one of the lucky ones. But it is still quite stressful. So it'll be interesting to see how things will pan out. I hope anybody listening, you know, is tuning in to the information that's available, particularly the artists. There is help out there now for self-employed people who will be able to sign up for universal credit and get paid at the statutory sick pay level, which is nearly £100 a week. And while that's not ideal, then it should take some of the immediate pressure off while you figure out how creatively you can try and get things happening online. Whether it's live shows, whether it's looking for commissions of some sort, whatever it might be. It's really important to not get into the mindset of procrastinating from getting the information that you need to find out what you're entitled to. And this is another fascinating thing. I mean, part of the measures that were outlined yesterday was a suspension, ultimately, of welfare conditionality. Welfare conditionality being the very stringent, strict process that most people have to go through accessing simple benefits, in particular universal credit. So the conditionality includes that you have to wait 6 weeks before you get your first payment out, or 5 weeks. It includes that you have to prove that you've been looking for work for 35 hours of the week. As well as you needing to be at appointments face to face, and if you're late you could get sanctioned. Basically it's the institutional equivalent of domestic abuse, the welfare reforms that were brought in. The way that people are reprimanded, the way that they're punished, the way that negative social cues are used to regiment their thinking, the way that letters are written to confuse deliberately and create fear and dread, the whole idea to disincentivize people from accessing benefits, reasoning that it would be easier to go and get a unsecure, low-paid, precarious job than it would be to go to the welfare state that was created to help you when you struggle. And the whole theory underpinning that is that most people who are trying to access benefits long-term are lazy or scroungers, or they don't want to work. It's interesting, isn't it, that at a moment where the arse is about to fall out the economy, thus people who normally wouldn't access benefits are preparing to access the benefit system. People who are politically active, people who are economically viable, people who are electorally lucrative. It's interesting that the minute that they may have to access benefits, it's like there's an immediate gentrification of the entire welfare state in preparation for potentially millions of people who haven't accessed it before, needing to get their hands on money in order to survive, in order to meet their financial obligations. So on one hand, anyone who needs the help, I want them to get it, and I'm glad that it's going to be easier for them, and that I don't have any resentment towards anyone regardless of their class background, and I'm glad that they're not going to have to experience what people I know and love and care about have had to experience, going through that absolute hellish minefield. So there's a part of me that's just, there's a residual anger there, because we were told that these measures and this harsh welfare conditionality, including the humiliating personal independence payment assessments, and all sorts of other forms of conditionality, we were told that this was necessary because the public finances had to be sorted out and everybody had to share the burden. That's what we were told. We were told there was no magic money tree. We were told that the benefit level had to be set at what it was set at, and that it couldn't rise with inflation, and that we were told that this was the way it was. Now, you could have offset the hardship that hundreds of thousands of people have experienced. Many people die Many people died. Many people died after being declared fit for work. Many people committed suicide. Many people have been pushed into homelessness and drug addiction. You could have offset all of that with like a fraction of the money that's been announced today. So this argument that you'll hear from people who say, oh, well, this is a crisis. It's like, well, it's a crisis for you. You're now in a crisis. You're now one of the people that circumstances have dictated to, that you now need state support. But there were lots of other people who had circumstances that were like a crisis and they needed state support, and the conditionality for them was totally different. Just very basic moral principles of equality. I don't want to get too hung up on it, and I don't want to get into kind of like sneering and being snarky, particularly when everybody's on edge. I don't want to like dig a trench. I don't want this to be the hill I'm going to die on. And I want to keep dialogues open with people of different political persuasions, but I do need to impress upon anybody out there that's listening who's maybe of a more moderate political persuasion or even further along to the right of the spectrum. If you're accessing the benefit system, or if you're benefiting from state intervention, you have to concede, therefore, that there is a role for the state and that you're being treated with more compassion and more dignity than a lot of people that the politicians that you voted for or that you believe in treated other people. And that is just at a very basic level not fair. Because what we are learning is that personal responsibility can only get you so far, and that you just need the right kind of crisis, and it doesn't matter how capable you are, how hard you work, how much you believe in yourself, how clearly you can visualize your future and manifest it. Sometimes circumstances will trump all of the self-agency, all of the willpower in the world. And that is an experience that is now universal in British society. I just hope that people who perhaps maybe had preconceptions about the welfare state and then they're accessing it and then they're realising it's very difficult, I hope that they might concede or they might adopt a new view, and that they might lend their voice to the calls that some of us have been making for a long time, that we can never return to the way things were before. We can never go back to people having to wait 5-6 weeks to get paid. Because now we're saying people can join the benefit system straight away and start getting paid within days. And that's the way that it should be. Obviously, you're going to get people scamming the system, but people are scamming the financial system, people are scamming the pensions, people are scamming the stock market. Like, wherever there is a system, people will scam it. Weed them out and deal with them. Don't treat everybody like a potential suspect in one area of life and give people the benefit of the doubt in another area of life just based on their class background, on their disposable income, how many initials they've got after their name. So it'll be interesting to see how things pan out. Obviously the situation's just changing day to day. And I think as inconvenient as this is going to be for a lot of people who are used to being socially mobile and enjoying a certain level of freedom and degrees of flexibility and choice, I think that it might have a positive impact in terms of creating more empathy, because what a lot of people are now experiencing is what people who live at the lower end of the spectrum always experience. They have very little choices. They have very little social mobility. They live in a society where people in the community are very unsympathetic to their needs. And ultimately, the only way out of it is debt. And And that is what it means to be on the wrong side of the train tracks in Britain. So as much as there is a part of me that's like, haha, get it up, you know how it feels. I'm just going to try and resist that, because I think this is a chance to create a proper dialogue with people who are now getting a deeper insight into something. Just as I got a bit of a deeper insight into what it's like when I started making more money. I had lots of assumptions about middle class people, and then I started making more money and realised it was a bit more complicated. And so while I don't necessarily, that doesn't undermine every criticism I would have had, at the same time I understand that it's not as easy to stereotype. And I just hope that a lot of people who are now dependent on the state for their livelihood will recognise that they are not more deserving of the state help than someone who earns much less or someone who had adverse circumstances. Everybody who needs help deserves help. It doesn't matter where you've come from or what your circumstances are. And it should just be just as easy for someone on one side of the train tracks to get access to that help as it is for somebody on the other side. So that's just my thoughts. Walk and Talk episode 2. I will continue to share my thoughts as they come. Shout out to You Call That Radio podcast. Shout out to Mark McGee for sorting out the graphic for the Darren McGarvey podcast. Obviously, that's the big umbrella for the different wee strands of podcasts that I'll be doing, depending on what I want to talk about. These are quite lo-fi right now, but the quality will improve. I can see myself getting in about this a bit, having a bit more time at home. I'm grateful to everyone for tuning in, and be sure to let me know what you think on my socials, Facebook, Twitter. I'm on there quite a lot. You can hit me up there. I'll try and get the audio of this uploaded onto YouTube as well. That's a good place for discussion. And I hope everyone's okay. Remember to keep in touch with people, to keep connected, to share honestly how you're feeling, and try and find a way each day to be useful, to help someone else. It can get you out your own head. I'm really needing to do that tomorrow. I've got a couple of people I'm going to phone to see how they're getting on. Yeah, be kind and keep washing those hands. Until next time, peace.